So we're going to talk about this fucking match. Okada and Omega at the Tokyo Dome, Wrestle Kingdom. Everybody's been talking about it. Dave Meltzer gave it 6 stars. And you sent me the link. I clicked on the link. It's 45 minutes of my life I'll never get back. And I'm not going to knock the fucking match. Here's the thing about Kenny Omega, and everybody knows that listens to the program regularly. I've had problems with him because of his activities in Japan, embarrassing the wrestling business and exposing it, etc. But with Kenny Omega, I first saw Kenny Omega in Ring of Honor in 2006-ish or so, and everybody was saying, oh, this kid's great. And when I watched him live, he reminded me a lot of the Ultimate Warrior. He did the head shaking, the goofy expressions. He had horrible basics, but you could tell the kid was a great athlete. And with experience, who knows what might happen. And so he left Ring of Honor. He went to Japan. He's Canadian originally, but he went to Japan and he wrestled there quite a bit. And Adam Pearce, when Pearce was booking Ring of Honor, booked Kenny Omega for Final Battle. I believe it was 2009. It was Final Battle 2009 in New York. And I was helping Adam at the time. And Adam emailed me one day a couple weeks before the show and said, oh, look at this. He forwarded the email. He said, Omega can't show up. He's hurt his ankle or his foot. And he sent this email, and Omega had sent an email, said, I can't be there at Final Battle. I'm injured. And he sent a picture of this fucked up ankle and foot. It looked fucking horrible. It looked like he had gangrene. I don't know what the fuck. And I even at the time wrote back, I said, is this really his fucking ankle, Adam? Because this looks fucking horrible. And Adam said, that's all I've got, and he ain't going to be there. So, of course, Omega worked in Japan that weekend. So he didn't even have the guts or the fucking ability in him to be honest with a guy that had booked him for a company that had booked him early in his career to say, I got a booking in Japan. That's my priority, which would have been understood. But instead he lied and sent this fucking bogus picture of somebody else's fucking foot. Where you get that, I don't even know. And so that's why he didn't show up in Ring of Honor anymore, because he was written off because he was a fucking lying sack of shit that no-showed a booking on false pretenses instead of being honest. Then, of course, he had the matches in Japan with the blow-up doll and the fucking 9-year-old girl. I'm not kidding, folks, if you're just listening to the experience for the first time. This fucking guy had competitive matches in front of ticket purchasing patrons in Japan with a blow-up doll and a 9-year-old girl. And I even got an email, which I read, and this was from last May. I think you were with us at that time, where some guy was trying to explain Kenny Omega's character in Japan. That, well, he takes it from, he works these joke federations like DDT or whatever in Japan, and that's when he does these things. And he was trying to explain that it all comes from video games, that Omega's character is from video games like Street Fighter and the character Zangief. I want to read you the response that I gave to the guy who emailed me explaining Kenny Omega's character, and then we're going to talk about this match. The guy's name was David, and he explained that, Omega has the Street Fighter video game character. And I said, I don't care what his fucking moveset out of a video game is. Everything you just mentioned is exactly what's fucked up the wrestling business to begin with. There is no rational explanation for a real pro wrestler having a match in public with a blow-up doll, and he should be blackballed from the entire business and have his ass beat for doing it. And finally, if a grown adult, supposed pro wrestler has a competitive match with a goddamn grade school girl in public, whether a part of a long-running angle or not, he should be boiled in oil, and any fucking promotions that would present this shit should be boycotted into bankruptcy by every wrestler in the world who gives a shit about their profession or their own self-respect. That's what I said then. Well, now, apparently, over the past couple of years, Omega's got big with it in New Japan, and now he was featured in the main event at the Tokyo Dome for New Japan Pro Wrestling, and with Okada, and everybody said, oh, this is the greatest match that's ever happened. And Dave Meltzer broke the scale and gave it 6 stars. And let me explain this. First of all, there's never been a perfect pro wrestling match. There's never been one, because that would be a match that is exciting, that drew money, that tore the house down, that got both guys over, and showed no obvious cooperation between the two guys in anything to reveal that it was a work. That's a perfect pro wrestling match. It's never happened because there's always a hole. There's always somewhere there's a hole. And as far as the star system, it's my fault. And we've talked about this many times and I've admitted it. I was sitting there in 1979 talking to my friend Norman Dooley that had a newsletter, and I was reading the TV guide and the 4 stars of the movies, and I'm reading his newsletter. I'm talking to him on the phone. I said, Norman, the way you go into detail on this, you ought to give the matches stars like they do in TV guide. And he started doing it. And everybody started picking up on it, and Dave picked up on it. And that's so for my everlasting regret at this point, because matches are subjective like art, and everybody sees them differently. But unfortunately, I invented the star rating system. And you know this to be true, Brian.
Yeah.
It was originally 4 stars because that's what they give movies, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Siskel and Ebert, whoever, TV guide. The first 5-star match ever was Terry Funk versus Jerry Lawler, March 23rd, 1981, Memphis Mid-South Coliseum. It's on YouTube. Look it up. Where that match was so far and away. Me and Norman were both there in person to witness it. I'm running around taking pictures. It was so far and away more believable in person, more exciting. It was so far and away better anything that we had ever seen before. That's a 5-star match. And we thought there'd never be another one. But then some more came along. And by the way, if you want to see 5-star matches, folks, I jotted down a few of them. Hold on. I'm trying to find the fucking list of my 5-star matches. Besides Jerry Lawler, Terry Funk, March 23rd, 1981, Memphis, there's also Tiger Mask and Dynamite Kid. Their classic match, I believe, was New Year's Day, January 1st, 1982. Of all the classics they had, that was the big one in Japan. There was Jerry Lawler and Dutch Mantell, the barbed wire match in Memphis, 1982. There was Lawler and Dundee, June 6, 1983, the loser leave town match. That's on YouTube. There was the Rock and Roll and Midnight Express in Charlotte in March 1986, March or April. No, maybe it was May, but I was in the cage above the ring. The edited version of that showed on Japanese TV is on the Midnight Express DVD, available at JimCornette.com. There was the Flair Steamboat Trilogy for WCW in 1989, any of the 3 of those matches, 5 stars. There was Austin and Hart, Stone Cold and Bret Hart in the WWF 1997, the I Quit match. There's been some others. Those are off the top of my head. But no, I watched this match. And I'm sorry, folks, but there is no way and shape and form. And if you watch them together, and if you're a younger fan, you might not agree with this because you didn't live in the time when pro wrestling matches actually happen. You live in sports entertainment matches. But there's no way that this Kenny Omega and Okada match was anywhere near as good as the matches that I just mentioned. It was a great display of athleticism. These guys, they took a lot of risks, but it had such obvious cooperation and moves that nobody could really get up from, and et cetera, that it doesn't fit in that category. As far as I'm concerned, Kenny Omega should do the motion capture deal for video games that he's so infatuated with. But it wasn't a 5-star pro wrestling match, much less a 6-star pro wrestling match. And, I'm sorry. I'm fucking sorry. But it was an exhibition of guys doing moves that, it was wonderful. The first 10 minutes I was dying. They fought on the floor forever without being counted out. And I just jotted down some things. They'd do a big move and then they'd lay around forever. They sold so much, and everybody said, Cornette, you say they don't sell at all. Well, there's some people that don't sell at all, and they sold so much because they knew they were going to go long because long equals classic, but they sold so much they were in slow-mo. Omega is a great athlete. He still has the stupid facial expressions. He's calmed down on the Ultimate Warrior fucking shit, and anything that reminds me of the Ultimate Warrior instantly makes me mad because he's the worst pushed pro wrestler in a major promotion ever. It was a really good 20-minute match that lasted 45 minutes. I think that also if I was the promoter, I would have fired them or fined them for bumping around the announce and technical tables and trying to knock the broadcast off the air. Okada has a beautiful drop kick. The thing that I popped on the most at like, fucking halfway through the match, Omega was backdropped over the top rope through a table. He didn't even touch nothing. It was beautiful. That could have been a great count out if you want to do a count out finish or a hospitalization angle or the finish. But then they went 20 more minutes. I've never seen anything like this goddamn thing. They went 20 more minutes. Omega did a full Nelson superplex off the fucking top rope on this guy, dropped him on his head. It wasn't the finish. If anybody thinks Omega goes to the WWE, he's going to be doing any of this stuff is fucking out of their mind. Okada did a tombstone pile driver on Omega, then picked him up without even covering him to hit his clothesline finish, which Omega kicked out of. All those great looking moves and nobody can throw a good looking punch, all those forearms that nobody sells. You're in a fight, you're throwing forearms instead of punches. Finally, Okada hits a leaping spin tombstone and then picks the guy up and hits his clothesline, and it's finally the finish. There was at least 5 bigger moves in the match. Dave Meltzer gave it 6 stars. And I still stand by my statement that anything that Dave Meltzer reports as news or facts are indeed facts and news. But as far as his opinions, and I've known Dave for 35 fucking years, his opinions, weed's legal in California now. That's the only way I can explain this. Because this was not the greatest wrestling match that has ever happened or that I've ever seen. Can you argue with me on this?
I thought it was really good. I thought the last 20 minutes or so were exceptional. I got into it. I liked it. And I'm someone who, not to the level of you, but someone who has not really been a big Kenny Omega fan because of the silliness and the facial expressions and just the shaking. He seems to just at times shake.
He shakes. That's what I'm talking about, that Ultimate Warrior bullshit. And by the way, I know everybody, he's dead and we shouldn't speak ill of the dead. Ultimate Warrior was a piece of shit when he was alive. And just because he died, it doesn't mean he wasn't a piece of shit. And just because he has a wife and children, and I feel bad for them, but in the wrestling business, he was a piece of shit. He broke Bobby Heenan's neck and never even apologized. Bobby told me that story himself. He never wanted to be one of the boys. He never wanted to get to be a better worker, never wanted to learn. He believed his own publicity. Vince loved him because of the fucking bodybuilder thing and pushed him to the moon. And there was that mass fucking hypnosis for goddamn 3 years or whatever is why he was over. But the Ultimate Warrior was the male version of Sable. He was totally unsuited for the wrestling business and was pushed because of his look only, a complete absence of any talent, and Omega reminds me of that. Except he's a great athlete. He really is, and he's obviously tried to get better, but he gets better by doing, or he thinks he gets better by doing video game fucking matches instead of by trying to be a professional wrestler and simulate combat. It was an exhibition of moves. And if that's what sells now, I guess that's what sells now, but it ain't pro wrestling, folks. Sorry.